Okay, so fortunately, some things remain forever, or another 10 years perhaps.
Right.
I mean, that's Bob Camblin right there.
Yeah.
Welcome to the deep dive, and today we're going deep, really deep into the world of artist Bob
Well,
Camblin.
we've got a ton of material to dig into here. Quotes, biographical stuff, reflections on his art.
Yeah, and you guys, the listeners, you've really come through with a lot of great sources on this guy.
And looking at all this, I mean, it's pretty clear right away. For Camblin, life and art, those were like two sides of the same coin, you know?
Absolutely. This wasn't some artist shut away in a studio.
No, not at all.
Hmm.
We're talking painting, drawing, even these like collaborative performances he did. And then later, he just takes off, becomes this kind of nomadic artist.
So our mission, if you will, is to try and figure out what was driving this guy's artistic vision. What was he seeing?
Right. What did he get that maybe we don't?
Exactly. And hopefully, by the end of this deep dive, you'll walk away with, I don't know, a new way of looking at things. Maybe even seeing the world through Bob Camblin's eyes a little bit.
So where do we even start with a guy like this? I mean, there's just so much.
Well, let's start with Camblin's own words, right? We've got all these quotes, like little seeds of thought, and I gotta say, some of them are really something. Like that one, fortunately, some things remain forever, or another 10 years, perhaps.
Yeah, I like that one.
It's got that sort of, I don't know, wry humor to it. He's acknowledging that nothing lasts forever, but he's not like bummed out about it.
Right. It's more like he's sort of winking at us like, hey, that's just the way it is.
Totally. And that acceptance of change, that impermanence, it seems to be a big part of how he saw the world.
Oh, absolutely. You see it popping up all over the place, like
Yeah.
in one of his haikus, the one about the cottonwood trees. 3 cottonwood trees, dense cluster of new branches, now with them gone. Look,
Oh, well, yeah.
it's beautiful, but it's also kind of sad. But then there's that look at the end, like he's directing our attention to what comes after, what's revealed when things change.
Right. It's not just about loss, it's about what emerges from that loss.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he wasn't just focused on what disappears either. He also had this deep reverence for nature. Remember that quote? Find something in nature that completes you and then surrender.
Yeah, that one really stuck with me too.
It's about finding that connection to something bigger than yourself and just letting go, surrendering to that.
Almost like nature becomes this anchor for him.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that surrendering, that letting go, it ties into his ideas about balance.
Oh, absolutely. Like striving for the perfectly average.
Right. Not getting too caught up in one way of thinking.
Yeah,
You wanted to appreciate, the logic of science and the magic of, well, magic.
that smear between the whiteness and the blackness, as he put it.
Yeah. Classic Camblin. And then there's that quote, and this is one of my favorites, in the balance, patience and yet, freedom again and yet. In silence, the reality can be maintained.
Whoa. Okay, unpack that one for me.
It's like he's saying, to really see things as they are, you need that balance between action and stillness, between patience and freedom. And you need that silence, that inner quiet, to really hold on to that reality.
That's deep. And you see this interconnectedness in so many of his quotes, like, look into the atom, you get what you need. Look into magic, and you get what you need. Philosophy and art are in both.
Right. It's like he's blowing up these categories we create, these walls we build between disciplines, science, magic, philosophy, art. They're all just different ways of trying to grasp the same fundamental truths.
Totally. Okay, but can we talk about some of those more, I don't know, poetic or evocative quotes, the ones that just kind of get under your skin?
Oh, yeah, for sure. There's a bunch of those.
It's like as they approached the memory of songs and music stopped at the moment the texture of its decay became visible to them. I mean, that's just, wow.
It's like you can almost feel that fading, that loss.
Right. It's not just that the memory is gone, it's that you can sense the absence.
Exactly. And what about that one, bright day and I soar, how cruel that my soul is attached to this earth. And yet, it's like this yearning for something beyond, something more.
Totally. Almost a sense of being trapped, even though he's soaring.
Right. A real tension there. Oh, and this one, I love this one. When you think, don't act. When you act, don't think.
Yeah, that's a good one. Very zen.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah,
Like, be present, be in the moment. Don't overthink it.
totally. And it's funny because then you have those quotes about communication and argument. Like, if you argue or if you agree, you may learn, but you do not communicate.
Ooh, that's a good one.
It's like he's saying to really connect with someone, you got to go beyond just trying to win an argument or even just agreeing.
It's about something deeper, right?
Yeah. And then there's that one, my attempts to stop arguing created an argument. You can just hear the frustration in his voice.
And the humor too, right? Like,
Oh,
oh man, I've been there.
totally. Okay, and we have to talk about his haiku. They're so simple, but they capture these little moments in nature so perfectly, like, not a leaf moves, and yet we all feel the cool breeze.
Yeah, that's a great example. It's about paying attention to the subtle things, the things we might usually miss.
And how everything is connected, even in stillness.
Right. Okay, so we've talked about his words, his thoughts. Now let's talk about his art.
Yeah, let's dive into his artistic philosophy, how it evolved over time. One thing that jumps out is his belief that art should speak to the soul, not just the intellect.
Right. And that really comes through in his later nomadic years. It's like he wanted to break free from the traditional art world, the galleries, the critics, the whole thing.
Create on his own
Yeah,
terms.
and just connect with people directly through his art.
And his artistic journey was pretty wild. He starts out with abstract impressionism, but then in the 70s, he shifts to this Mouches Volantes style.
Muchas volantes. Yeah, that's a mouthful.
It is. For those who might not be art historians, can you explain what that means?
Sure. So abstract expressionism, that's all about expressing emotions and feelings through abstract forms and colors. Then you have mouches volantes, which means flying flies in French.
Flying flies? What does that have to do with art?
Well, it refers to those little floaters you sometimes see in your vision, those kind of like blurry spots.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I know what you mean.
Right. So Camblin, he developed this technique of using dots and dashes to create this kind of visual effect. He was playing with optical illusions, to make the viewer really think about what they were seeing.
It's like he wanted to shake things up, make people see things differently.
Exactly. And this all ties into those broader artistic movements he was inspired by, like Dada and surrealism, movement that were all about like shaking things up, questioning reality.
Right. And that idea of collaboration was huge for him, too, like signing his work as anonymous.
Yeah, that was a big statement. Like he was saying the individual artist, the ego, that wasn't important. It was about the art itself, the collective act of creation.
And then there were those collaborations with Earl Staley and Joe Tate, B&E Productions, and the holding firm. What was going on there?
Man, they were like this performance art trio before anyone was even calling it performance art.
Like those events they put on, the tattoo show, the camping show.
Exactly. It was all about pushing the boundaries of what art could be, blurring the lines between art and life, and having a lot of fun in the process.
Okay, but what about those drawings and paintings where he would hide meanings, create these little traps for the viewer?
Oh, the traps. Yeah, those are fascinating.
It's like he's setting up a puzzle, challenging the viewer to really look closely and figure things out.
Yeah, he didn't want people to just passively observe his art. He wanted them to work for it,
Yeah.
to actively engage with it and maybe in the process discover something about themselves.
It's almost like he's saying, hey, don't just take things at face value, look deeper.
Right. And the fact that he used text in his art sometimes just adds another layer to that puzzle.
And you mentioned Tom Wolfe's The Painted Word.
Yeah, that's an interesting connection. Wolfe was critiquing how art theory can overshadow the actual experience of looking at art. And I think Camblin was playing with that idea.
So the words weren't necessarily there to explain the art, they were just another part of the mystery.
Exactly. Okay, so then there's this quote where Camblin talks about wanting to remake Goya in 20th century terms. What do you make of that?
Oh, that's a good one. Goya, man, he was intense.
He was. His work is dark, powerful, full of social commentary. He wasn't afraid to show the ugliness of humanity. And I think Camblin, he wanted to do something similar,
Yeah.
expose the anxieties and the undercurrents of his own time.
Make people uncomfortable.
Maybe, but definitely make them think. Okay, so we've got this evolution in his work. We see early pieces focus on social protest. Then he starts drawing inspiration from Cremoni and Etruscan terracotta figurines.
That's quite a shift.
It is. I think it shows a real artistic growth. He's moving away from explicit political statements and exploring more internal, more universal themes.
And his time in Italy on that Fulbright scholarship, that must have been a huge influence.
Oh, massive.
Yeah.
The Uffizi Gallery, the Capuchin Catacombs, those are some powerful visual experiences.
Especially the catacombs. I mean, those preserved bodies.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine seeing that and not being deeply affected by it.
Yeah.
And Camblin was fascinated by them. He even called them mummies in his notes, which is interesting.
It is. It's like that experience stayed with him, And you can see it reflected in some of his work like KPFT Radio and Flora, which are his takes on Botticelli's The Birth of Venus and Primavera.
Right. He's taking these iconic Renaissance images and reimagining them through his own lens, his own experience.
Okay, and then there's the Saint Bambola series. which eventually he felt the need to move on from.
Yeah, artists often have those periods where they get really into a particular theme or character, and then they feel the need to break free.
Right, like they've explored it as much as they can.
Exactly. And I
Yeah.
mean, he even talked about wanting to turn off my myth-making machine, which I think is a pretty powerful image.
Okay, so now let's talk about those recurring themes and motifs that run through his work.
Okay, so one of the big ones is metamorphosis, especially in his work from the 1970s. It's like he was on this enigmatic search for life's mysteries, trying to understand those processes of change and transformation.
And you see that in the imagery he used: puppets, scarecrows, skulls, glass reliquaries.
Powerful symbols, right?
Yeah.
That all speak to those ideas of transformation, fragility, the fleeting nature of life.
And the fact that he was inspired by writers like Nikos Kazantzakis and Gunter Grass, especially Grass's Dog Years, with those scarecrows, it just adds another layer of depth.
Totally. And then you've got that figure four symbol, which is described as representing entanglement and unseen mechanisms. What do you think about that one?
I see it as this feeling of being caught in something, trapped by forces you can't fully understand.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And it's interesting because a figure four is also a type of trap. So that visual metaphor really works on multiple levels.
Okay, and then those broader themes of traps, stillness, and illusion, those are everywhere in his work.
Absolutely. The traps, they represent those pitfalls we encounter in life, those things that hold us back. And then the stillness, that's a more complex one. Is it about surrender or is it about finding that inner peace?
It's like he's asking us to consider those different possibilities, and the illusion that ties back to his Muchas Volantes period, right?
Totally. He's constantly questioning what's real. It's just a trick of perception,
Yeah.
making us think about how we see the world.
Okay, before we move on, I wanted to touch on the Big Al series and that multimedia piece, Descent from the Cross.
Oh yeah, good ones.
I mean, they show just how diverse his work was.
Right, and that descent from the cross with all those personal symbols about human strengths and weaknesses, it really gets to the core of his exploration of the human condition.
And you can't forget about the recurring pioneer woman's statue.
Ah, yes, the pioneer woman. That connection to his mother, his upbringing in Ponca City, it's like this grounding element in his work.
Yeah.
You know, a reminder of his roots.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's like no matter how abstract or symbolic his art got, there was always this thread connecting it back to his personal history.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's talk about Camblin the man, his life, his influences.
Born in Ponca City, Oklahoma, parents were both artists.
Yeah, so art was in his blood from the beginning. And then there's that amazing backdrop of his childhood, the Marland estate, the pioneer woman statue.
And of course, his friendship with Forrest Harrisberger, they connected over drawing in high school, and they stayed friends for years.
It's really cool to see how those early connections can shape a person's life.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then you have those big life experiences, serving in the Air Force Reserve during the Korean War, traveling through Europe on that Fulbright scholarship. Those must have had a huge impact on him.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Especially that time in Italy, immersing himself in Italian art and culture.
And then his teaching career. Years spent sharing his knowledge and passion with students.
And then, bam, he just walks away from it all to pursue his art full time. Becomes this nomad, traveling and creating.
That's a bold move.
It is. It shows how committed he was to his art. He wasn't afraid to take risks, to follow his own path.
And even after he returned to Houston, he was still moving around. Oregon, Louisiana with his wife Nancy. And now there are people working to put together a retrospective of his work in Houston.
Yeah, which is awesome. It's like even after all these years, his art is still resonating with people.
Okay, but can we talk about some of those little details that give us a glimpse into his personality? Like, he was a huge reader, apparently had books everywhere.
Yeah, that's classic artist, right?
Yeah.
Always absorbing information, always learning.
And he had this Mr. Peanut costume.
Right. And he'd wear it sometimes. I think it was another way for him to play with identity, poke fun at the seriousness of the art world.
I love that. And his studio was described as this wizard's den, full of strange objects and tools.
Sounds about right. It's like you can just picture him in there, surrounded by his creations, lost in his own world.
Okay, one last thing I wanted to touch on. The connection between Camblin's work and those Eastern philosophies, Zen, the I Ching, Taoism.
Yeah, that's a really interesting layer. It's like his art and those philosophies, they're speaking the same language in a way.
Like that baboon painting. Those vibrant colors, the mandrel's intense gaze. It's been interpreted through the lens of Zen, the I Ching, and Taoism.
Right. And it works on all those levels, the colors, the gaze. It's all about perception, about seeing beyond the surface.
And that book, Zen and the Art of Enlightenment, which features some of his drawings, it's really trying to get people to think about art in a new way, to challenge their assumptions.
Yeah, it's about seeing the world with fresh eyes, finding those moments of insight in the everyday.
So as we wrap this up, what would you say are the key takeaways about Bob Camblin and his art?
Well, I think he was, at his core, a questioner. He wasn't afraid to challenge conventions, to explore the hidden meanings behind things. He was fascinated by transformation, by the impermanence of life.
And he had this amazing ability to weave those big ideas into his art, creating works that are both personal and universal.
Exactly. And for you, our listener, we hope this deep dive has given you a new appreciation for this incredible artist and his unique vision.
And maybe, just maybe, it's inspired you to look at the world a little differently, to question your own assumptions.
Now, here's something to think about as you go about your day. Remember Kemblin's traps, those little visual puzzles he built into his art? Well, what about the traps we create in our own minds? Those ways of seeing the world that limit us, that keep us from seeing the bigger picture.
That's a good question. And if you're intrigued to learn more about this fascinating artist, we definitely encourage you to check out some images of his work online.
Yeah, or pick up a copy of Zen and the Art of Enlightenment. Trust me, you won't be disappointed.
All right, that's it for this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring.
And keep questioning.